evolving to our very last session, very last presentation. Also remotely from Switzerland, or from Belgium, I guess, we have Filipa Peleja. Filipa, portuguesa, lead data scientist from Levi Strauss. She has gone through a fantastic professional career, and she knows what she's going to be talking about. It's a pleasure to have you with us, Filipa. Can you hear me? Yes, you can.
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you so much.
Filipa, vais continuar em inglês, mas agradeço-te em português o teu entusiasmo na disponibilidade para estares hoje connosco, a partilhares a tua experiência e a tua história também com a nossa comunidade. Muito obrigado.
Obrigada. Portanto, posso partilhar o meu ecrã? Okay. Okay. Can you see my screen? Yes, can you see my screen? Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you so much for the introduction and also for the invitation to participate in this great event. And today I will be talking about a different topic from the previous keynote, but I also agree that it's a really important point for us to take into account when we build data-driven solutions. And another point that we need to worry about is what I'm going to be talking today, which is how do we deploy our solutions? What we need to keep in mind to make sure that they scale and that over time they actually produce the results that we intended for when we release them into production. And to start on that journey, I also want to show you what's been going on in the past years. So the intent here is not for you to understand what's underneath all these very small icons, but the message is that we have a kind of a madness around the tools that are made available for us to work with. And on one side of the coin, you might think, wow, this is amazing, we have a lot to choose from. But the other side of the coin, we also might think of, okay, what is the best solution? And how can we actually integrate all these systems so we can actually go and deploy our solutions in a very seamless way? And thinking about that, and if you look at all of that, I'm just going to kind of take a tiny bit of it, a fraction. And within the explosion of all those tools, because we have different purposes for them, right? We can think about the ETL pipelines. You can think about also all the tools that are available for us to build our models. But then what tools actually allows us to track our models when we have them into production, right? So when we go throughout that journey that we have our solution ready, we did all the evaluations that we wanted to do, and now they are, on the IT side, deployed, and you moved on to another project. How do we know that over time, indeed, that solution is still producing the results you want? And this is kind of a slice from the madness that we just looked at. So still, we do see a lot of solutions. Another thing that we also observe within this type of tools that intend to help us track our models into production is that they've been growing in the past years. And the reason for that is because we've seen the growth of the digitalization, the AI within the organizations, which also mean that we have more and more solutions that were deployed, and we kind of encountered into this challenge. And the existing solutions were not actually enough for what we needed. But still, we can think about two things. So I've been kind of focusing on the first question that you see on the slide, which is, why do we need? Well, we want to make sure that they are actually doing the job we want over time. That's one of the things. But then how do we decide, right? And why is this, these two questions are interlinked, and why are they so important? Let me show you one thing that can very easily happen, and maybe in your organization is actually happening right now. You can have something that we can call it kind of sort of a zoo, but why are we saying this? It's because within the same org, even within the same team, we might have solutions that are being deployed using completely different set of tools. Now, this is not about being right or wrong. Let's look at this example of project 1 and project 2 coming from the same departments. Project 1 decided to use Kubeflow for deployment. They used TensorFlow serving, and then monitoring, they chose Datadog. And then on the Project 2, well, they decided to do the whole solution from notebooks, deploy those solutions, use custom Flag application, and then Prometheus for monitoring. Now, the thing is, let's imagine both solutions are good. They integrated well. The thing is that they are not harmonized across the different teams that work in the same organization. From a tracking perspective, it actually introduces a lot of entropy. It means that we are having the need to have more people having to learn different tools, and probably some of them are not being even tracked properly because we are diverting our energy to improve others just because, for example, one of the projects were more important. However, if your project was, say, not as prioritized as the other one, if you would be using the same tool, you would be actually leveraging everything that is being improved for that specific pipeline. So that's what we want to avoid. We want to make it that we are actually all aligned. This can also be seen as a sort of a silo, right? Because each team is too focused on making their own solution. They don't realize that they have other tools that are already available for them. So having that said, as we are talking about this is, we're still within the data science realm, right? So the machine learning solutions, the data-driven solutions. And why all of a sudden we are also kind of so much focusing on this about tracking it and so on. I mean, if you think about the traditional IT project engineering solution, this is pretty straightforward. We do have already quite a mature systems. This is only more new within the data world, right? So then when we are actually changing the spectrum, and the reason behind that is because when you think about machine learning, it's actually code, but not only code. It actually comes attached with data. And because of that relationship, it imposes a kind of a new trend that came in. So I'm talking about MLOps. So we're talking about a specific set of colleagues that are specialized not only from the DevOps perspective, but focusing on solutions that have not only code and data. There's this quote here from Cristiano that I think it's really interesting. It kind of sums it up. If you think about MLOps, it's a set of practices that actually combines machine learning, DevOps, and data engineering. And all of them work together, which aims to actually deploy and maintain a machine learning system into production. So I trust it. It works efficiently. So it's not taking like a lot of resources, which can sometimes happen, and are reliable. So I trust it over time. And then when you think about these three different set of skills, they actually intersect. Sometimes I even refer to this as kind of the gray area. Who is responsible to do this or that? Sometimes it's not that obvious, right? Because there's a certain intersection where we have the knowledge to actually contribute. So it's all about teamwork. And the reason why we need it, and I'll put it more into writing, is we do want to make sure that our deployment, it's not slow, it's not inconsistent, it's not prone to risk of over time producing the results that are not what it was when we deployed it first. The lack of reproducibility, it's also a point, right? So when I was talking about the zoo scenario, if you think about it, the solutions are so different that I can't reproduce across different projects. That's one point. Then the other point is if we even go deeper, if I do things that are very specific to my, let's say, my reality, then it's really hard for me to reproduce it. So the results that I have once, I cannot see it again. So that's bad in terms of being able to test and see if something is off or not. Okay, and this is just some of the points that actually drive the conversation. So when you think about this, the purpose of these tools that I was showing in the beginning is to allow us in a very, let's say, more friendly way, because we don't have to do everything, every tiny little piece of solution. So because that also makes it too customized. Every time that we onboard any colleague, they need to kind of have a slow, they will have a curve to adapt to those customized solutions. So you want to actually adapt these systems, not only because of what I just mentioned, but also because they were developed for this specific purpose. So they will be much more robust on, delivering what we need. We want to automate it, and we wanted to make it really clear for the organization. What is the value? Quantify the value that we bring from machine learning solutions. And also, again, trust that they maintain that quality over time. So these two are key aspects. So you want to track it. We want to track it. When I talk about tracking, it's not only about tracking in a sense that it's producing what you want, but we're also tracking the KPIs. And those KPIs are relevant in terms of the value that it brings. So when you think about the solution that we want to apply, it needs to have the tools that allow me to put this together. And then again, talking about the tools, it's not only about choosing them. It's also about making sure that within the organization, and I'm reminding you like that department A that had different solutions, that we had that department B, different solutions. So why does that happen? Well, the thing is, it's about integration, right? So sometimes, given my scenario, I might see that a given tool is best for me just because it will integrate much better with my existing reality, right? So it's not only about the best tools. So we don't really have like a formula that you go there, pick that one, that's the best one, top one. It doesn't really work that way. It really depends on the tools that you have right there available for you, which ones will make it deprecated, but others that you are still working with them and you want to choose the best one that actually integrates well with your ecosystem. So that's the perfect solution. And once now I gave you already the introduction about who are, let's say, the roles that work together, what are the tools in the sense that what are they intended for? How does this kind of come together within, let's say, a journey from that when we are building a data-driven solution? I think this schema kind of highlights it. So when I was talking about the gray zone and how we collaborate together, so we could say that the ones that are in the beginning of the journey are the data engineers. They are the ones who ensure that we have all the data on our side. They work on top of the raw data. They do a lot of things. I mean, you see that box cleaning ETL, but it just there's a lot more to it. But bottom line is that they are the ones that are preparing all the data lakes, all the data that it will be the core, the starting point for any solution that we will do. The data science team will be focused on receiving some requests from the organization, helping them, identifying what we need to work on top. They will explore the data, which data is the one that we need for the solution, and propose a solution for it. So they will build their machine learning models that actually intend to get back to the business. This is what is going to help you out. But this is within the data science realm. So we did all this work. So what happens after? I finished my project, I delivered, I showed all the KPIs, but I need to leave it running. So that's when we go for the operations. And within the operations is where we see all the MLOps, all those tools that I was talking about, right? So they will receive the model. We can think about it. It's going to package, it's going to train it, it's going to be serving it. We might have the human monitoring we might thinking about. We can have a dashboard. We can have some automation reports, all those insights, and then also allow a mistake when something all of a sudden is off. And they are able to actually identify it in a very quick manner. So it's not like you have a solution that was deployed. Let's imagine in a scenario that we don't have this blue box here. We don't have the operations. We deploy it, and well, the worst case scenario is that when something is off, because all of a sudden the business come back to us and say, hey, what happened to the model that you are providing me? This is actually making me take the wrong decisions. So that's what we want to avoid. So within the journey where they end and in the modeling and deployment, and this is super interlinked, because when I want to deploy a solution, when I was talking about the integration component, we have different solutions. I might have a solution that works on top of computer vision, so I have images. I have different data sources that data engineers need to provide me. I have also a different requirement in terms of what are the machines that my solution needs to be working on. Where am I serving? How often? What is the load? Is it a real-time solution? And so forth. So the modeling and deployment, they kind of are interlinked within this journey. And when I mean, now from a data science perspective, what do I care about? Where am I asking my colleagues from the MLOps side? Well, I care about the quality. And I do really care about, is it still aligned with the key tests that I showed the stakeholders? So when I was focusing on deploying the solution, I did tests and they gave me the thumbs up. I trust in your solution. So I want to make sure that is aligned with that. I mean, I put here another point, which is also sometimes we need to take into account that when you are looking at it from an overall perspective, you did your analysis, you saw that the key tests, and those key tests sometimes focus on different segments. There's a reason for that. We do want to avoid any sort of discriminatory behavior. Now, this is again the test that I did when I deployed it over time. This is again something that I should work together with my colleagues from the MLOps side, which I tell them, look, you also need to take into account the discriminatory behavior. I do want it to perform in a fairly state. So I also need to track that, which this is kind of, if you think about it, it's a second level on top of the key tests. And I'm not actually focusing a lot on the tests in this presentation, but I didn't want to kind of skip it. So just give you a sense of how this goes, because I just mentioned I'm talking like it's biased, right? So, but that's just one tiny fraction of things that we need to worry about, right? But this, when I'm saying tiny fraction, doesn't mean that they're super important. So when I think about the tests and how I go through them before I fully deploy my solution, there are many different ways of approaching that. And here I'm just telling you about different ways that you can do it as you deploy your solution. And one way of looking at it is a spectrum that varies degrees of automation. So you can have one solution that you could say that it's super sensitive, and because of that, you deploy it together with a human support. Many times these are actually your stakeholders. You can have another way of approaching it, which is for the shadow mode. Or you can even have some sort of partial automation or fully AI, so you fully trust that we can fully automate that. I mean, this means that you are tracking your KPIs that you designed at the beginning, and you're not inspecting it or taking just slices. Like when I say slices, it's like, imagine that you have a spectrum, like you have a lot of different countries where you operate, and you just decide to kind of test first in one of those countries. That could be one decision. So when you are testing a solution, while you are deploying it, you might go to different strategies. That's what I wanted to show you here. And why those strategies are important? Well, it means that my deployment scenario, all the things that I want to track, they need to be able to, those tools that I was telling you about, they need to help me to be able to deploy this. We were talking about code and data, right? So that's the thing. So we are actually looking at, for example, if you look here at the canary, right? Deploy a model on a smaller fraction of a target output. It could be the country like I was telling you about, or it could be just 5%, like the example that we have here, 5% of the email traffic targeting. So you want to see over a representative sample of your targets if you are operating well, before you actually deploy it in full scale. Now, if you are doing that, you need to have the tools that allows you to deploy your solution only for them, right? So this is something that goes beyond the model itself, because from a data science perspective, you're really focusing on your data, but the systems that actually, bring this to the consumer, for example, they need to be able to redirect in such a way. And they need to be able to, when they receive the KPIs back, if it's, for example, email targeting, you have the click-through, you have the conversion rate, this sort of things, you need to know that it came from them, right? So these are within the deployment scenarios realm. Within also a ML solution, we think about deployment, and I'm here just showing you one of the tools that you saw in the beginning. How do they look like? So one really popular one is Kubeflow. And the Kubeflow allows us to build a flow. So that's basically it. You can also think about it as a pipeline as well. So it's like one step after the other until we actually will arrive to our final destination, which in our case, from the data science side, it will be our model predictions. Now, in general, you would have such a flow for your training and also for the serving. So they are actually broken apart. This is the best practice. And then when you have the serving side, you are also tracking all those KPIs that I was telling you about, that we want to be able to see, okay, I bid these predictions, they're being served, and now how are they doing? So how are they performing? So maybe today I'm performing well, maybe tomorrow my competitor released a new product and my model is no longer having the impact I intended for. Okay, so to put it kind of together, we have this this notion, like again coming from the engineering side, which is continuous integration, continuous development. Sorry. So the CI/CD pipelines, what are they intent? Why are they so popular? Why do we always say that we want CI/CD pipelines? Well, because I deployed my model today, my competitor just did something and impacted heavily the behavior of my target variable. So right now I'm building a version 2 of my model. I do not want to go again through the whole journey. I don't even have the time for that. I need to be responsive. I need to be agile. So that's why you want a CI/CD pipeline. You want to be able to go for it, redesign, and go and release it in a very seamless manner. And it's a continuous journey, as you see in this diagram, right? You have the design, you have the model development, you have the operations, and they are continuously changing. And the changes does not mean that we need to have a completely new solution. They are designed in a way that are able to adapt in a very quick manner. So from the MLOps perspective, they are able to provide this type of solutions for a data-driven problem. And now I know that I'm on time. I'm just going to take about 5 minutes just to tell you a bit about another component, because there's a lot of pieces to it, right? I was just telling you about how we make this journey. I told you that we put our models there, and I'm so worried about tracking them and so on. So what do I want to track, right? So I just don't want to leave that kind of in a void. Think about a data science model and what can happen over time that is very specific to this combination of code and data. You can have something that is known as data drifts. So the data, the way that it behaves, it's different from the beginning of my journey, because data it changes over time. So it's not something that is static. And the problem is that if my model relies on that data, then I have a problem, because I need to adjust the way that I implemented that model, because the data is different, so it's no longer working. I want to capture automatically those data drifts through these tools, to these MLOps tools. I want also to capture any potential model drifts. Okay, so this is within the concepts that we want to target. It can come from the input metrics, like I was telling you the example of the data drift, but also the output, which is the output of my model, that maybe that didn't have any drift on my data, but actually my model is not behaving as I wanted. So how do I do that? I build these dashboards. I use these tools that allows me to detect them. Okay, so machine learning should be continuous, and we should be able to, in a very quick manner, be responsive and know beforehand, before we have, let's say, the disaster, know that something is off. Okay, so here I'm just telling you about some specific things that you can track. For example, you can track from an ensemble model, you can have the hyperparameters or even the parameters of your model that you want to track them if they are, because imagine that you are redeploying your model, that could be a problem. So there are many different things that you design, and you design together with them. There's not, so these tools, by the way, many of them say that, oh, you can just use it out of the box. Well, you can use it out of the box, but sometimes your models are not out of the box. And this is the moment that we actually start to be critical when we think about it. Wait, is that tool actually allowing me to customize? Because I need to go beyond those parameters. And this is when the moment that we are knowledgeable to identify, does this integrate well with my current tools, but also does it respond my needs? And finally, I'm just jumping here. I had here a couple of slides. The slides are available, then you can have a look. I'm just going to jump about the tools, the choice of the tools. It really depends on what you need. But if it helps out, I think this diagram that, by the way, this is published, this is quite recent, this is from November 2021. It was a guide how we can evaluate these tools from MLOps platforms. And when you look at this diagram here, it's just telling us within different spectrums. Am I really worried about the deployment? That's really my focus. Is it more on the monitoring side? Is it on the training or the data management? So here you see some of those tools that came from that madness that I showed you in the beginning, where they actually position themselves. So the thing is, some of them, I mean, they have a bit of all components, obviously, but the point that I was telling you about having those specific things, those customizations and so on, this is where you find the differences. If I'm really focusing on having a really good tracking system, when I am in the training moment, maybe I want something like Neptune, maybe I want something like Polyaxon, because they will allow me to customize purely to my needs. So this helps me decide the tools that I want to have the MLOps team providing for me from a data science perspective. And all right, so then this is just a recap of again those 3 skills. And thank you so much for your time. As I said, the presentation is available. So I skipped only a few slides, but I'll be happy to answer any questions. I took 4 minutes extra.
It's all right. We're on time. Well, just wanted to say thank you. We're just moving fast towards the very end of this 2-day conference. It's funny. I can see that the image you have on the screen was taken from "But Asking Can Hurt." After listening to you, I'd be hurting myself trying to come up with a question to send you. So I leave you with no questions from our end. I'll just thank you very much for, again, your availability, your interest, and your motivation. The way you presented your slides and your information is definitely very, very motivating for the community. We're going to be sharing your presentation sometime next week. We'll let the community know. And eventually some people will be interested in getting in touch with you, exploring some topics with you. We'll make those bridges. Thank you so very much once again for joining us, for being with us. And this is the very end of the SPA Insights 2021. You were the one to close it, not to wrap it up. We're going to move on with Jorge from... we'll speak to you soon. Thank you. You can just keep on following us or log off. You're up.